On today's episode of Three Wide in the Middle, Keith and I discuss the F1 silly season, what's going on with the driver carousel, and of course, the Oscar Piastri and Daniel Ricciardo drama with Alpine and McLaren. Then we dive into the NASCAR world with Kevin Harvick getting his second win in a row last week at Richmond. What is Kimi Räikkönen going to look like at Watkins Glen? And Donny Schatz' incredible win at the Knoxville Nationals, plus a whole lot more, including an Ask Three Wide question, which involves the High Limit Sprint Car Series. So all of that is coming up next. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Three Wide in the Middle, your home for all things racing. My name is Thomas Brandon, and with me, of course, as always, my man Keith Bradley. Keith, how's it going?
Yep, I'm working overtime, so I work next 6 days.
Oh, damn, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I'm not looking too thrilled about it, or am I looking forward to it, because I should be off today.
Yeah, I hear that. I've been so busy these last few days. I was already busy beyond belief, and then of course, my brother and I get this idea to start another business, and so now I'm doing that. And keep in mind, I was already starting another business on top of that, on top of my job that I have, my part-time job, and my full-time business, which has already successfully been running for the last couple of years. So, I mean, I didn't have any room on my plate to begin with, and like an idiot, which I always do this, like I just take on way too much, and I know I'm taking on too much, and I know it's gonna stretch me super thin, and I'm just like, oh, I'll figure it out. And yeah, so now I'm in that same exact situation that I've been in before. And, I was up this morning at like 2 a.m. just thinking, what the hell am I doing? But yeah, I feel your pain, man. When you got that much work, it sucks. But fortunately,
I think the only thing it's looking forward to, it's my wallet after the end of it.
well, there you go. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. That's the one scary thing for me. I mean, I've got my one business, which is good and successful and stuff like that, and it's working. Now, obviously, I have to, keep pushing it to not only maintain it, but grow it, right? Because obviously something could change tomorrow and, everything could go away. But when starting the new stuff, that's the thing, man, is there's no guarantee of a return on that investment, right? Like, even though I'm not having to put up a bunch of money, it's the time investment. And like, that's the thing about it, and I learned these lessons over the last decade, right? Because up until, 2020, when I started my current business, my LLC, which has been successful since I started it. But up until that, every other thing that I had tried to do had, moments of success, but never sustained success. And the time investment of that is because you don't know whether or not you're ever going to get that back, in a, return on all that time invested. It's, yeah, it sucks when you don't. It really does. But when you do, it's awesome. So, I understand people who don't want to do their own business. Like, I really get it. Because had I known going into this, like, had somebody pulled me aside and said, hey, man, you're going to invest 8 years of, 14, 16 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, and you're going to do that before you ever see sustained success. And even when you get to sustained success, you're still going to be putting in a lot of hours and a lot of time, and it's going to be a while before you can finally start sitting back and like really reaping the benefit of that, right? You're going to get to 10, 11 years invested before you do that. I don't think I would have done looking back on, now I'm to the point where it's like I've already done it all, so I might as well. But looking back on it, back then, if I had a crystal ball, I don't think I would have gone this route. I probably would have went a different one. So it's yeah, it's scary, but it also makes it a challenge, so that makes it fun. So yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, speaking of which, let's get to the racing because we do have a bunch of stuff to cover in today's show. We've got some NASCAR stuff coming up with Watkins Glen. We had Richmond last week. We've got some sprint car news, obviously Knoxville Nationals, which was an absolutely incredible weekend of racing. But first, before we get to that, we got to cover the F1 silly season. Again, we got to just a few things since last week's show. Now, if you remember last week, I spent, 30 minutes covering the whole Daniel Ricciardo, Oscar Piastri situation. Now, we were not just covering it in terms of what was going on, but me and Keith were looking at it from a different perspective of, if somebody invests in you, do you owe it back to them, right? Even if there's not a contract there, should you, stand by that and say, hey, look, you guys have stuck with me, now I'm going to stick with you, type of deal. That was kind of the way that we looked at it. Well, more news has come out. Apparently, Daniel Ricciardo's team is asking for, it looks like $21 million for a buyout. Ricciardo is, the way that the contract that he has right now with McLaren, for those of you who don't know, and this is from all the research that I've done and everything that I have seen, is that Ricciardo has what we would call in like the NBA, and I don't mean that like I work in the NBA, but like if you talk about NBA contracts, we would call it a 2-1, meaning that there's 2 years that are set, they're guaranteed. All right. Both parties, the driver and the team, agree that, hey, these first 2 seasons, these 2 years, you will be our driver. And then you have the and one. And usually that's going to be some sort of an option, whether it's going to be a driver option or a team option. Okay. So the way that it would work is if, let's say it was a team option, right? And Ricciardo's out getting podiums. He's got maybe a victory or two, and he's running 5th or 6th in the points. McLaren's going to want to keep him. And so what they would do is they would exercise that option so they could keep Ricciardo for the 2023 season. Okay. Likewise, or in the other side of that, if it was a driver option, Ricciardo would have the opportunity to determine whether or not he would drive for McLaren in 2023. If he was doing really good and he liked what McLaren had, what they're providing him, then he could exercise that option to stay. He could say, hey, things are going good, I want to stay, we're going to do it. Or on the flip side of that, if he finds himself in the situation he is right now, where things have not gone well and he is struggling by his standards, he could exercise that option and say, hey, look, I'm going to stick around one more year because you guys are going to be paying me. I think his contract is for 18, 20 million, something like that. And so I'm going to stick around for one more season. And, I'm going to run for you guys, whether you like it or not, because I've got the option. I'm going to exercise that option. And so the way that it sounds is for him to be basically relieved of duty. Okay. Ricciardo's team is asking for a buyout of $21 million for him to basically just go away, not run next season. And if they can get that, then Piastri will be in the McLaren. Everything that I'm seeing and hearing right now, the chances of Oscar Piastri running a McLaren next season, being on the full-time driver for McLaren next season, it's looking pretty strong. I would put it at about an 85% chance. I would actually, it's much more likely than not. Just in the last week, it seems like there's really been some dominoes that have fallen, and I don't want to get into the whole F1 CRB, which is their contract recognition board. There's a bunch of news out there that you guys can go really, if you really want to dive into contracts and stuff like that. But it's looking like Piastri is going to end up with McLaren. His team of people and his agent is Mark Webber. If you know anything about Mark Webber when he was a driver, this is not somebody who's a pushover. It's a very strong-willed, strong-headed individual. And it sounds like, for all intents and purposes, they are going to be out. And like we talked about last week, I don't see a scenario now where Alpine would even want him in the car after everything that's happened. That's just going to be uncomfortable. Okay. It really is. Yes, there are situations that you can point to, with drivers before who wanted out, the team made them stay, and then they ended up going on to have incredible success and stuff like that. But not every situation is like that. And that was, 15, 20 years ago. It's a different day now. And social media is more prevalent than it was before. I don't see him staying with Alpine. Now, that being said, there has been some other interesting news that has come out about drivers. So obviously, Daniel Ricciardo, if he does get bought out, where could he end up? A lot of people are saying that he will end up with Alpine, that would just be a natural fit. Because here's another thing, is that McLaren is not only looking to buy out Ricciardo's contract, they're also looking to give him what has been called a soft landing. So they're wanting to make sure that he actually gets another F1 seat. They don't just want to dump him. And I think that really speaks to Ricciardo, the person, right? Not the driver. People seem to just love this guy. And so they want to make sure that he actually gets another seat. Keep in mind, he's already ran for Alpine before. Alpine was Renault, okay? That's what they were just a year ago, Renault. He ran for 2 seasons with Renault. He left Renault for McLaren. Will he go back there? Because it is a different, it is different management and the, the board and all that stuff like that. The senior management, everything is different now. So would he go back there? I don't know. Would they want him back there? I don't know. It's hard to tell, right? Who knows what's going on, but that seems to be the, the consensus in terms of where he's going to end up. But there are some other drivers that are potentially going to be on the move. Another one is Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda has not, from the time of recording this, has not been offered a extension yet or contract for his current team, which is the AlphaTauri team. Could he look to move somewhere else? If he does that, that would open up a seat at AlphaTauri, which is, keep in mind, the sister team to Red Bull. So that's kind of the junior team, the farm system to Red Bull. Yes, it is an F1 team, but that's a midfield team, and Red Bull will basically grab those drivers as they need it. Pierre Gasly, who was with AlphaTauri, there has been rumblings that he might look to move because he has a clause in his contract that states he can leave after this season to a team that's better than his current team. Okay, so for example, if it was a team that finishes better in the points than AlphaTauri, Gasly could go to that team if he's offered a contract. One of those teams that's actually better right now than AlphaTauri is Alpine. So could he end up at Alpine if they have a seat that opens up because they don't get Ricciardo after this whole Piastri deal? Who knows, right? Would Gasly exercise that? I don't know. I've heard 2 sides of this where it said he's looking to do that. I've also heard people say he's not going anywhere. Obviously, the team principal at AlphaTauri, all right, and the head guys of the whole Red Bull operation are saying we want him. He's not going anywhere. But at the end of the day, Alpine was saying the same thing about Piastri, and you can see that as an absolute catastrophe right now. So who knows? Okay. The other one is Zhou Guanyu, who's with Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guanyu, one of the big things with him is that there was a lot of people who did not believe he should have ended up in F1 as quickly as he did, especially with Piastri, Oscar Piastri, not getting a seat. One of the reasons why Zhou Guanyu ended up in F1 as quickly as he did is because he is Chinese. The Chinese market is huge, not just to F1, but to every sport in the world. This was an opportunity for them to put a talented driver, because make no mistake, he is still talented, in their car and open up that market, which potentially brings in money. And as we know, cash is king, not just in F1, in every form of racing. And lastly, we've got Mick Schumacher. Schumacher, from everything that I have heard so far, it sounds like Haas wants to retain him, but from my understanding, nothing has been signed yet. So there is a chance that he himself could end up on another team. So a lot of stuff still happening with the whole silly season. We could see an absolute, chaotic mess in terms of, just drivers moving to different teams and leaving their rides. Or we could see a lot of this just, hold serve, and it's just someone like Piastri or something like that who moves, right? So still a lot going on. Obviously, we've got, what is it? I think 2 more weeks of the summer break, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Spa is it the 31st of August? I gotta check that real quick, because the 26th to the 28th is the Belgium Grand Prix. So yeah, we still have this week and then the rest of next week before then. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of that chaos with the drivers. Keith, I know you don't follow F1, but the whole F1 silly season, as they call it, and we talked about it a little bit with the NASCAR guys last week and the week before. It's literally becoming something akin to the NBA with free agency.
Yeah, yep, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a mix between like the NBA, the NFL, and a little bit of American stock car racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at, how much money these guys make, it's a lot on the line. And when you have these commodities as a driver, who can obviously earn you money, right? When you talk about someone like, for example, Lewis Hamilton, right? Dude's won 7 championships. Basically dominated an entire decade with Mercedes. Every year that Mercedes wins that constructors championship, right? You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that team is getting. Okay. And these F1 teams are not like, the NASCAR teams. And we're going to actually get more into the business side of the NASCAR teams later in today's show, right? Where they, the whole thing about, these race teams basically being like nonprofits, that's not the case anymore. These F1 teams generate a ton of profit. Even the ones that are poorly ran are still generating, a big chunk of money. And when you can have a driver, right, that can help you generate that revenue, right? If you can have a Lewis Hamilton or, a Lando Norris, a Charles Leclerc, right? These guys who are going to make 14, 15 million dollars a year in terms of US dollars. Obviously, when you look at it in pounds or euros, it's different, but it's all relative. And is a $15 million a year investment worth it when that driver could potentially help you make 200 million? Well, yes, absolutely it is, right? So these drivers, getting them to your team and keeping them is just, it's so important. And when you look at the contract lengths, they're really short in F1, and that's one thing that's kind of shocking. Is even someone like Lewis Hamilton, right? Like that guy will sign an extension with Mercedes, and it'll be for like 2 years, right? Like that. I mean, Keith, we would not allow that to happen in American sports if we were able to. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, because usually when you re-sign your superstars, it's 4 or 5,
Yeah, at least.
maybe to the upwards of 7 years.
Yeah, especially when they're in their prime, right? Like think about
Yeah,
Lewis Hamilton's
100%.
just won his third or fourth championship in a row. He's 32 years old, and it's like, dude, let's lock you up till 40, right? Like let's keep you until 2026, right? Like that's what
And
we would do in America.
maybe that's their way, doing these 2-year deals of if something goes wrong, you don't have that
You're not
longevity
stuck to it.
being
Yes,
glued to that person,
it is. And I have heard
which
that.
makes sense.
Yes, and I have heard that from people that are much more in the know than me, where the shorter contracts are there's a benefit for actually a lot of parties. Number one, as a driver, we know that there's only a handful of those teams that are really championship contender teams consistently, right? You've got Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. Yes, in years past, you had, McLaren. They're hoping to get back there one day. Same thing with Renault or now Alpine. Like years ago, right? They were a contender. They've fallen off a bit, but for the most part, you've always got these two or three teams that are the championship front runners. And so as a driver, if you're not with one of those teams, right? If you're racing for Alfa Romeo or Alpine or, Haas, your goal, right? Even though you want to do good for your team, your main objective is to be a world champion. And so you either want to A, get your team to that level, which you can only do so much as a driver, or B, have the opportunity to get one of those coveted seats when the time comes. And so, yes, you don't want to lock yourself into 4 or 5 years, right? In one of those midfield teams. You want to make sure that you've got flexibility. And even the teams, right? You don't want to lock yourself into a driver because look at all these guys who are coming up, right? The talent is so crazy good in the F2, F3 world. And, when you look at the fact that there's only 20 spots available in F1, right? Like you're taught, I mean, that is so small. When you think about all the race car drivers, in the world who have F1 aspirations, and then you think that there's 20 spots, that is the most difficult seat to get, difficult profession to be in. It's all right, it's more difficult than the NBA, soccer, European football, whatever you want to call it, NFL, Major League Baseball. There's nothing more difficult on a percentage basis. You're talking about a fraction of a percent. It's so small. So it does make sense that they do those shorter contracts, like we were talking about. And it makes it more exciting, gives us something to talk about during this time of year. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that here over the next 10 days, heading into Spa. But let's move on because we've got a bunch of stuff to cover on today's show in our next segment, which is going to be hit or miss, and we will do that right after the break. All right, so up next, we've got our hit or miss portion of the show. And as you know, Keith, this is literally probably one of my favorite things that we do. I
Same
love
here.
it. Yeah, I
I do
love it.
too.
And we've got, what do we got? We got 6 topics to cover today. And I have a feeling you're probably going to like the first one, which I wanted to get off to a strong start with it. So, first up, hit or miss. After last week's win at Richmond and his second win in a row, Kevin Harvick has found his mojo at the perfect time and is now a top contender for the championship. Keith, does that hit or miss the mark?
I'm gonna say it hits the mark, and
I am too.
all these guys in the playoffs or getting ready for the playoffs should be worried because the sleeping giant is awake, and it it's pretty hard to keep a champion down, you know what I mean? And I think what's really clicking for that 4 team, not only the momentum and the confidence now, when Rodney Childers finally decided to throw the old notebook away
Mhm.
and say, "We need to focus on this car. I need to quit worrying about what we used to do. We're in the now." And
Yes.
ever since then, man, that team has turned the corner. They have found some serious speed in that car. And if I'm Chase Elliott, I'm nervous just because I'm the championship favorite, but that old man Harvick back there
And
that's a
he's
washed
looking
up has
good.
been, he's awake and
Yeah.
he looks more determined and more fired up than he has all year. So
Yeah.
I'd be very nervous if I was everybody else because he's awake now. He's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I think it definitely hits the mark, and, you know, I I think Harvick, when you look at the number of championships that Harvick has, he's got 1 championship. And to win a championship in NASCAR in the Cup
Very
Series,
hard.
it's so hard, right? You look at the level of drivers who have been icons in the sport, Hall of Famers, right? And they don't have a championship. It's so difficult, right? You look at someone like Mark
Look at
Martin,
Mark,
right?
yeah,
He's one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, doesn't have a championship. It just so happened that, when he had a couple of his best years of all time, there was just, this punk named Jeff Gordon racing, or another one by the name of Jimmy Johnson, right? Like two of the greats. So it's very difficult. And to me, Harvick should have two. He should have one more. That
yep,
season that he had a couple years ago, he was dominant. He was by far the best car and best driver the whole year. It didn't work out, obviously. And, he didn't get the championship, which happens. But to me, it's felt like he's been on a mission to get that one that he missed out on. And like you said, they've come alive. And Rodney Childress, whatever it is that he's figured out with this car, he's figured it out at the perfect time, because man, they have been really,
and
really good.
and if you look at, like, the past 5 races, and I'm gonna take out Indy Road Course, that don't count
Yeah,
because you
take
had a
that
bunch
out.
of morons going
Yeah,
5 wide into turn 1.
yeah,
But if you look at the past 5 races, this 4 car, they've been carrying the Ford, not only the Stewart-Haas banner, but the Ford banner.
yeah.
They've
They've
been
been
fast, they've
strong.
been running up front, and you know what it reminds me of this season with Harvick? When Tony Stewart won his last championship, where
I was
the playoffs
literally gonna
started to
say
turn the
that.
corner, and Tony Stewart they ramped it up. And this team, this 4 team, they know how to win a championship. They
They
know how to
do.
get it done, and it is not, I would not wanna back them into a corner.
No, I'm really looking forward to the championship, the playoff this year. I really am. I think it's going to be one of the best ones we've seen in a while. It's shaping up to be that way. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think Harvick's got to be one of the favorites. Obviously that the whole goal is to just make the final four and put yourself into that
and
position.
you know what? This second win, it helps him because he can almost point his way into the second round.
Yeah, that's a huge
He
deal.
went from 2 weeks ago to being out to being completely locked in, and a former champ being completely out of it.
Yeah, yeah, he's
And
he's way up there in the standings now compared to where he was.
and I think what makes this scarier, and people can laugh, they can say what they want, this championship's like one of Kevin Harvick's strongest tracks.
Mhm.
They got the car figured out, and Richmond's a races a lot like Phoenix, so if he goes into the Final 4, I'd be nervous. Not gonna
Yep.
lie, I would be nervous if I'm the other teams.
Yep. It's gonna be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully
Old man
hopefully it
Harv's
plays out
is
that good.
here.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
I love it just because he's 40 something years old and the whole persona is he'll never win again. Like
Mhm.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yep.
He was kinda going down that same, I'm not gonna say same path because when Jimmy Johnson fell off, he fell off.
Yeah.
And Kevin Harvick plateaued at, like, you could guarantee, like, at the end of the day, he'll be in the top 5. He
Yep.
may not have winning pace, but he'll be there.
Yep.
And now he's awake, and I'd
Yep.
be scared.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. So, yeah, it's gonna be fun. All right. Next one. The Iceman is coming. Kimi Räikkönen will score a top 10 finish in his Cup race this weekend at Watkins Glen. Does this hit the mark or miss the mark?
Ooh, this could go both ways, but I'm gonna have to say it'll miss the mark. And
I think it'll miss the mark too. I want it to hit the mark. Nothing would make me
I want it to
happier than to
blow
see
it out of the
Kimi.
water.
Yeah, I would nothing make me happier to see than to see Kimi
And this
have a
is
phenomenal run.
it's what his first NASCAR start since, dude,
Well,
years.
yeah, and even then, I don't
And
think he ever ran a cup car. I think he ran a
no,
truck
he
and an
ran a truck and
Xfinity.
an Xfinity car
Yeah,
at an oval. We're going to a road course where we're in
uh,
a new car
he's
where you can
obviously better
lean.
suited, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but you can lean on each other in these cars a
mm-hmm.
lot more, and that's something he's not used to. I think
No,
the first
not at
time he
all.
gets door slammed, it might be game over,
Yeah,
just because that's out of his comfort zone. In his road course racing, I'm gonna say with Formula One, you don't touch
no, you don't.
at all, and I feel like the first time he gets door slammed, the wind will be out of the sails and or he might crash. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody knows. Now, there is this chance that it could fall right in his lap because Chevrolet's been doing a lot for Kimmy
mm-hmm.
as far as testing, simulator data, going to the simulator. Now, the good thing is on Kimmy's side, these freaking trackhouse cars, that man, they've been missiles. They've been
They've been
fast.
fast. They've absolutely been fast.
They've been strong on road courses. So,
Mm-hmm. They have.
but I'm gonna have to say it misses the mark, man.
Yeah.
I just,
I think it's going to
I,
miss the mark too.
yeah,
When you look at the fact that obviously it's his first ever cup race, yes, there's no doubting the man's talent. He's incredibly talented. I don't care who you are. If you win a championship in Formula One, if you might not be a good oval racer, but hands down, you're one of the greats when it comes to circuit racing because we just talked about how hard it is to even make that level, let alone win. So the man can obviously drive.
I just,
And it's just with the way right now going into Watkins Glen with the the just the ramping up, right? Everything's coming down to the wire. We've got Watkins Glen and Daytona, right? You've got guys who got to get a win to get into the playoffs. You got drivers who are on literally the bubble, right? And you've also got guys coming in, right? You got AJ Allmendinger, right? I mean, you can make the case that AJ Allmendinger
yeah,
is the best road course racer in
100%.
all of NASCAR, right? Like you've got some stud drivers who are not only, Cup Series regulars, but guys who come and run these road course races. So for him to get a top 10, there's going to need to be some things that fall his way. Especially when you look at the testing restrictions and stuff like that are put on teams, right? Like I was looking into this today before we started the show, and he can't test with the team that he's racing for at a NASCAR sanctioned track. He's had to be testing in these other cars, which is not the actual Chevy version of it's just all these little things where, yes, it's seat time and stuff like that, but it's not what he's
Different.
actually doing. Yeah, it's different. And so it makes it really hard. Even as
And
good as he is, it's very hard to overcome that when you've got, one practice, out of the
what?
weekend.
Right, right. And I think Joey Hand, me personally, Joey Hand from Rick Ware will have a better weekend than Kimmy. And
I
and I
could
think
see that.
Corey LaJoy said it perfect on his podcast yesterday. He was like, "Dude, if it comes down to me," and he goes, "And I'm a terrible road racer, but if it comes down to me or Kimmy finishing in the top 10," he goes, "I'm moving Kimmy just because I can go to Daytona and I have to worry about seeing him in the bus a lot."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's like, he goes, "I feel like he could run good, but I think he's gonna get bullied, and then he's not gonna know exactly what to do because that it's not his type of racing."
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what
I'm
happens.
excited to watch it though.
Yeah, me too. All right. So keeping up with Watkins Glen, our next hit or miss is the bookmakers got it right by making Chase Elliott the odds-on favorite to win this weekend at Watkins Glen. Does that hit or miss the mark?
I'm gonna say it misses the mark, and I think Tyler Reddick's gonna agree with me.
I could agree with that. They've got Chase Elliott as a 5-1 favorite to win this race. And um I I kind of think that's insane. Now, obviously, I understand the odds makers have to give somebody the odds. They got to make somebody the favorite. Um, but I'm with you. I could see Tyler Reddick. Now, keep in mind, Tyler Reddick is at 6-1. Kyle Larson's 8-1, and Chastain is 9-1. And I think who's the other one? Cindric or Suarez? Cindric is 10-1. So those are kind of your favorites right there. Um, but I'm with you. I think Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott. Obviously, the kid can drive anything. Any track. He's good on any track. I mean, we've seen him win these road circuits, whether it's a Roval or something like. We've seen him win these before. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think I'm not seeing him get the win this weekend at Watkins Glen.
No, and that's no takeaway from him, but damn,
No,
Tyler Reddick. I'd be more comfortable betting on Tyler Reddick right now at a road course than I would be Chase Elliott, just because that 8 car's been freaking fast.
it has, and he's been obviously a big part of that. He's been, key in
But
that.
we could see a big surprise this weekend too, because Watkins Glen is different from all the other road courses that we went to. I mean, it's a hell of a lot faster. So
Well, it is, and this configuration that they run is very different. This isn't the old boot. You know what I mean? Like this is, they call it the Cup circuit, and it's, you've got basically the bus stop, and then you've got a big sweeping turn, and then you're shooting down another long straightaway, and another couple a quick left hander, and then a right hander. You're back on the front stretch. I mean, it's a very fast track. To me, it's the best road course that NASCAR goes to. Whether it's this configuration or the boot, I actually really liked the boot version of it. I wish they had just kept that, but I see the reasoning for the whole Cup circuit, layout with it. But it's my favorite of the road courses. I really
mine
like
too.
it, and yeah, I like Coda, you know what I mean? I grew up going to races at Sears Point or Sonoma. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I've never thought Sonoma was a good track for the Cup cars. I just never have. To me,
No, and
Sonoma's
it's really not.
yeah, it's an Indy car track. You know what I mean? It's a
It,
GT3 track. It's not a Cup car track.
it puts on some decent races. I think
Yeah.
it's a little more technical than all the other ones that we go
Mm-hmm.
to, or that they go to. Not we. I wish I
Yeah.
went,
Yeah.
but Watkins Glen, man, I've not seen a bad race there
Yeah.
in very
I
long.
think it's really, really good. So
Hell, look at the exciting one that they had in 2006, where Kevin Harvick didn't get a full tank of fuel
yeah.
when nobody knew what was going to happen in the last, what was it, 40 laps.
Yeah, that was yeah, it's had some really good racing there. It really
Really has.
has. Even when they were in the previous generation cars and those cars weren't racing good anywhere else, you know what I mean? Like it was doing Watkins Glen was always a good show. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, we talked about Kimmy, but I think I'm
Ross,
thinking Ross is going to obviously be someone to look at. He's always fast
hopefully
everywhere.
you don't quit that bus stop. Ross, you got to take a right when you get
Yeah,
to the bus stop. Don't do it
exactly. Yeah,
straight.
you got to go through there. You can't just blow right through the cones. But even his teammate Daniel Suarez, obviously he's good on the road stuff and he's been fast this season. Tyler Reddick, as you talked about, Ryan Blaney's another one. You know what I mean? Ryan Blaney,
Yeah,
he's in
you
the
can't.
playoffs right now, but man, he would love to lock himself in with the win before Daytona. So,
I think we're going to see some playoff implications Sunday.
oh, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some guys who would really like to get this locked up before Daytona because obviously Daytona is a straight crapshoot. You
Yeah.
know, it's just that kind of racing, especially when you've got, the last opportunity to get into the playoffs. It's going to be madness. So yeah, there's going to be some big, big playoff implications this weekend at Watkins Glen. All right. Next. This is a good one. Donny Schatz's incredible win at the Knoxville Nationals gives him 11 for his career, and that's 11 Knoxville Nationals wins, career, championship wins for his career. Before he retires, Donny Schatz will beat Steve Kinser's record of 12 Knoxville Nationals wins. Keith, does this hit or miss the mark?
Oh. Hmm.
That's a tough one.
I'm gonna say it hits the mark. I
Mm.
really am, because Donnie Schatz and Kevin Harvick's out here defying the odds of the old guys. They're showing everybody that the old guys can still get it done.
They
And
can. Steve Kinser raced until he was really old,
yeah,
you know?
well, I mean, Steve Kanzer, Mark Martin, Sammy Swindell, he probably should
Hmm.
hang it up, but he's still running. So,
Yeah.
but with Donnie Schatz, when that big spotlight gets turned on, he shows up.
Yeah.
I think he's got a really good shot at doing it.
I do too.
Would not be surprised.
It would not surprise me to see him get 2 more Knoxville Nationals wins, which is what he would need to beat Kinser. He's at 11 right now. One more would tie him, and then 2 more would give him the record. Obviously, you're talking about how many more years will he run. Obviously, for him to have 11 Knoxville Nationals wins, he does good at Knoxville. I mean, when you're talking about the best of the best showing up and then you've won that 11 times, obviously you're good at that track. One of the reasons why I think he can run good there for an extended period of time, even another 5, 6, 7 times, is because of the way that track races. When you watch that race, at the start of the race, he was going backwards. I mean, he was going backwards. He was getting past. I was like, damn, Schatz is going to have a horrible run tonight. You know what I mean? Like the first half of the race, he was just not very good. But obviously, that was intentional because the second half of the race, he was incredible. And he just started picking people off and doing what he does best, right? I mean, he's just running that bottom, being smooth. And at the end of the race, he was the best one out there. And he just showed how good he can be. I saw this firsthand last year at the World Finals, where he comes from the back and finished like 5th and just literally was passing people like they were upside down and in reverse. It was absolutely incredible to just watch him pick cars off like that lap after lap after lap. So I can see him doing it. Obviously, when you've only got one shot a year and you've only got, depending on how many more chances he runs, I would say he's got another 5 or 6 legitimate shots at doing it. I could see him doing it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. He's going to need to do it at about a 33% rate, but I could see him doing it. So I'm with you, man. It would not shock me to see him, win 2 more of these because he's actually, he kind of hit a lull there, and he seems to have kind of found something this last month and a half, and he's been putting it together. So hopefully it carries through, and we can see more victory lanes with Donny Schatz in it because that was cool to see last weekend.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right, next one. Last Sunday's NASCAR race at Richmond was one of the best races we've seen at Richmond in a very long time. Does that hit or miss the mark?
Okay, I'm gonna say it hits the mark.
I am
Just
too.
because you had the strategy coming into play, the track really widened out, and man, Richmond got stale for a little bit.
It
Don't
did.
know why. Don't know what caused it because it used to be considered the excitement track.
Yeah, for
And
short
they've
tracks,
been
that was one
very
of the best ones.
yeah. Well, if you put it up against Martinsville, it's way better than Martinsville.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
and like Corey LaJoy was saying on his playlist or podcast, as the tires started to wear, you couldn't get the car down to full throttle or you would just smoke the tires from one end of the track to the other.
Yes, and
So,
that's awesome. I mean, when was
yeah,
the last time we've had cars that were doing that? You know what I
uh,
mean?
the early
Yeah,
2000s.
when they were 900 horsepower, right?
Yeah,
So it was, I really liked it. Um, and here's the thing. For those people out there who have complained about it, who have said like they didn't think the racing was that good, those people, when you're talking about just side by side action, passing, swapping places, like I get it.
crashes,
Yeah, I
yeah,
get it. It doesn't fit that bill. But for someone like myself who loves the strategy aspect of it and seeing people do different strategies, whether it's their tires or their pitch strategy or whatever it is, I thought it was really a really good race. And to see
really good.
people on the different strategies on different tires, you had people who were on older tires versus newer tires and who could do what. I mean, Christopher Bell was coming at the end of that race. Couple more
Flying.
laps.
He
Couple
was
more laps.
flying.
Yeah. If that was the Richmond 402, right? Christopher Bell would have been the winner probably. So, I thought it was really cool and interesting. And I'm someone who likes that aspect of NASCAR. I like the
Yep,
strategy stuff. So I really enjoyed
strategy
it. I thought it was a
races.
good race.
Yep,
And it
me too.
wasn't something that was, overshadowed by a bunch of, I mean, obviously it's a short track, they're shifting and stuff, but it wasn't like, a Martinsville epidemic. So, yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good one. Now, I still
Um,
think they should only race there once a year. I
yep,
do think that. I would like to see more of that. But
I would
overall, I was happy with it.
I would love for them to take their first date, give it to Road America,
I would be okay with that.
or give it to a track that's off the schedule that probably could be on the schedule, like a Kentucky Speedway or a Chicagoland.
North
But now,
Wilkesboro.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, Before we go to the next subject, I'm gonna hit on this real quick. Did you hear Kevin Harvick's interview
No, I
after the
did
race?
not hear it.
So towards the end of the race, he was like, "I made a couple mistakes. I forgot to shift." He was running around there in 4th gear. So now it's kinda like, alright, well, if you was shifting, if you was forgetting to shift, maybe that's why Christopher Bell closed in so fast, but
It could be.
who knows? We'll never know.
It could be. I know that the shifting was very prevalent there, and it's a big
It
deal. The way that
it
they've got
was.
those things geared. Yeah.
Well, and it was like Denny Hamlin was saying, you could make a mistake in the center of the corner, downshift real quick and take off.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the margin of error is so much wider than it was before because of all the
Yeah,
shifting. Yeah. That is one thing I don't like about it. And I do think next season they'll have that fixed. I
and
don't
I think
think
so
it's going to be
too.
a problem. Yeah, but they just got to rework these gears when it comes to the transaxles because we talked about this before. The gears that are in these transaxles, it was meant for a car with high downforce and 550 horsepower. Now they're at 670 horsepower and low downforce. That's you're talking about a completely different package in terms of gear ratios and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they'll have it fixed next year, and I think it'll be much better. But with that being said, I would still like to see them only go to that track once. Like we talked about
Yeah,
before, there's only a couple of tracks I think they should go to twice a year. Other than that, every other, I would like to see them just go to it once. I think that would be much better.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Our sixth and final topic here in Hit or Miss. We're going to talk about the business side of NASCAR because this was pretty shocking when I heard this. And when I first heard this, I didn't actually believe it. I actually had to do some research on it to confirm this, but it's out there. Rumor has it is that NASCAR charters are now worth in the area of $20 million a piece. This is a great thing for the NASCAR owners and the sport itself. Keith, does this hit or miss the mark?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to say it misses the mark.
Really?
Just just because, like, if you're a Dale Jr., you're talking about coming to Cup. Now you're gonna have to spend 20 million just for a charter. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know how to even put it now. I wouldn't want to spend the upfront of the 20 million if that makes any sense. So, like, if I'm Dale Jr., I think I'm going to Richard Childress, like, hey. let me buy you out. Let me take over the team. But hindsight, I think it's great for the sport of NASCAR because I mean, if you are a Rick Ware or a smaller team that has a charter,
Yes.
at least you know that you could sell it, sell the charter and make some money off of it.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. See, I think it hits the mark. And the reason I think it hits the mark is it provides some form of tangible value
Yeah,
to the team.
and I agree with that. I
Yes.
100% agree with
You
that.
know, before, if your team was going to be going out of
50-50
business,
on it.
what was the team worth? Whatever the
Right,
parts,
right.
whatever parts you have, your shop, most of the shops, most of those teams,
Well,
they lease their shops, right? They don't even own
well,
them.
and let's face it, with this new car, if like Stewart Haas goes out of business tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
it ain't like they can just sell that car to Xfinity teams or ARCA teams.
Yes, exactly.
So they're gonna lose their ass anyway
Yep.
because of the new car.
Yeah. So no, I like it.
I'm
I think,
50-50 on it.
yeah,
I'll put it that way.
I think what we're gonna see in NASCAR, and I actually believe this is a good thing, is I think we're gonna see these NASCAR teams become more like sports franchises. I really do.
Yeah.
And that charter is gonna be the equivalent of owning, obviously it'll never be as valuable, but I'm just using it as an example of owning the Dallas Cowboys, right? Where
Yeah.
you have no problem paying that 20 million because you know it's going to go up because there's only 36 of these or 40 of them or whatever that number is. And you know that it's going to be going up because if you want to get into NASCAR, then you're going to have and do it consistently, then you've got to have that charter. You've got to foot that bill. Now, the the issue that comes up, and this is where I get where teams would not want to make that investment right now, is going forward, right? There's still no definitive direction in terms of what's the split going to be when it comes to the new television deal, what that new television deal is even going to be. We already know that the model that NASCAR is currently using when it comes to sponsorship dollars, we already know that that needs to be reworked because you're seeing the amount of sponsors that you need just to get through a season in NASCAR now has grown exponentially, right? Like we've talked
Oh
about this
yeah.
before. The days of seeing, right, the Pepsi car or the Napa car are gone. It just doesn't exist, right? Now these guys have got 15 different paint schemes that they're running because they've got to have 15 different primary sponsors to foot the bill for the season. You just
Right.
can't have
And
that one sponsor no more.
and there's only 1 to 2 drivers in the field that have one sponsor.
Yes, and a lot of that is carryover from them. They've been with them for so long.
Yeah. Well, and when we look at it, look at Kevin Harvick, one of the biggest names in the sport.
Mhm.
He's got 3 or 4 primary sponsors. Kyle
Yeah.
Busch, same thing.
Mhm.
Now, hindsight, when I say there's a couple drivers that only have one, and it's the Rick Ware guys. They have one sponsor. But I I feel the same way you feel. I
Yeah.
think it's gonna turn into these teams are gonna be like NFL sports franchises.
Yep.
They're gonna get X amount of dollars out of the TV deal
Mhm.
just to help because let's face it, trying to find sponsorship for millions of dollars for a race car damn near over.
Yes, it is. And I think that but see, I also think that that is a good thing in terms of redistributing the
Yeah.
money that comes in through the
Well,
TV deals
and
because live sports, whether it's NASCAR or freaking ping pong, it does not matter. Live
yeah,
sports is the only game in town when it comes to appointment viewing. It's the only thing that's left. People don't sit down and go, "Oh, my show comes on Wednesdays at 6 p.m." Those days are gone. If you want
yep.
somebody somewhere, right? I mean, unless it is a live sporting event, their appointment viewing is dead, and that's the one thing that live sports has, and even
Well,
NASCAR, which is a part of that.
and here's the problem. Every other sport, that team gets a percentage of the TV deal,
Yes.
except for NASCAR.
Yep.
I think I think the only people that get the money from the TV deals, NASCAR itself and these tracks, and the tracks ain't doing shit with the money.
No, which is one of the reasons why I was happy to hear
Yeah,
that they were changing their split as well, because
and
they can't keep doing what they've been doing with those tracks.
and you know, and it helps the guys like Denny Hamlins of the world that's trying to, all right, I want my own pit crews for my teams. Well, if I get
Yes.
some of this TV deal, that'll help pay for it.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
I think now, I mean, I'm sorry, but NASCAR needs to come up off some of this damn money,
Mhm.
help these teams around him. Yeah, granted, Denny Hamlin's a superstar. He's got millions, maybe even hundreds of millions, and Michael Jordan, but it shouldn't be that way, you know?
Yes. Absolutely. You're right. No, you're the ability for a team like, a Rick Ware, or one of these lower budget teams, right? The ability for a team to get stuff together, come out and race, and then potentially, if they can show promise, get a charter, right? That opportunity should still be there. It should not be that,
And
hey, you've got to have Jeff Bezos as a car owner, right? Otherwise, you're
right.
not going to be able to run.
Well, and I think my only issue with the charter and Rick Ware is they've been around for I don't know how long now, but they have a strong alliance with Stuart Haas. It don't seem like it's working at all. I
No.
think I think there's got to be like I, I don't know, maybe a cutoff. I know if you finish in a certain point standings on the owners that they take your charter and they can sell it. I feel like they need to do that more because there's teams that want to come to Cup. They just can't because there's no charters
Yeah.
available, and it's either you get in or you get out.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, I'm actually okay with that.
but I'm okay with
Depending on
Rick
how
Ware
they do
being
it.
here.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
they got a right to be here too.
Yeah, but see, I'm also okay with relegation, right? Like, if they implemented a form of relegation like you see in, soccer, right? European football, when you talk about like the Premier Leagues, or, these top leagues where they've got relegation, where it's like, hey, look, man, if you're at the bottom, then you go down a division, right? You got
Yeah,
to earn your way back up. Like, I'm okay with that. If you've got somebody, right, who's holding, essentially a prized commodity that's extremely valuable. Now, I'm not saying you take it from them, right? Like, this isn't the government claiming eminent domain. I don't say you just, hey, come in, we're going to snatch your charters away from you and you're shit out of luck. That's not what I'm saying. But, if they can't, you know, improve, if they can't cut it, I could see where it's like, hey, look, man, you've had 3 years of being at the bottom of the barrel. We are going to be taking your charters and selling them. You will get the value for them, but we are opening those charters up for other teams to potentially get them.
yeah,
You can still run,
and
but you've got to take the open spots.
and maybe I mean, let's face it, when the TV deal happens, everybody's going to benefit from it. Every team.
Yes.
Some
Yes.
way, somehow, it's going to benefit. Maybe that'll help them. I mean, granted, I don't think they'll get a Stewart Haas amount of the TV deal or a
Mm-hmm.
Joe Gibbs Racing, but being a smaller team, they have a car that's fully funded.
Yes.
It should technically help them. Should. I mean, there's a lot of key words in there, but I don't know. Only time will tell.
Yes, it will. So yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that stuff moving forward. Obviously, the TV deal is going to be a huge, huge factor in that. But yeah, I do like where things are at right now with that system.
I think our sport or the sport of NASCAR is heading in a better direction than what it was 4 years ago.
Absolutely, 100%. I could not agree more. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's going to do it all for hit or miss. And before we wrap up today's show, we got a couple more things that we got to cover. First up, before we get to our Ask Three Wide segment of the show, we've got to do our GOAT of the week, which is our greatest of all time for the week. Obviously, it's kind of hard to be the greatest of all time for just 1 week, but that's the way we do it here on Three Wide in the Middle. So, Keith, who was your GOAT of the week? I think I know.
Oh, so my go to the week, I gotta go with Kevin Harvick.
I knew it.
just because of when they won at Michigan, everybody's like, "All right, yeah, that's cool. You won at Michigan." Like, kinda like how Dale Jr. broke his big winless streak at Michigan, then just fell
Yeah,
right back off again. But they turned around and they went to Richmond, started off, about the end of the stage 2, I think it was, they started really coming to the front. It turned into an old Kevin Harvick kinda race, and, I mean, why wouldn't I pick Kevin Harvick? I mean, he
exactly.
is one of my favorite racers, so
Exactly. No, that's a good one. I like that one. To be honest, he made my final two for my goat of the week. To me, there was only two choices this week. It was either Kevin Harvick or my choice, and that's Donny Schatz.
not surprised.
Yeah, but to come out, win your 11th Knoxville Nationals, to do it at, what is he, 45 years old, is incredible. He's, in my opinion, he is the second greatest sprint car driver of all time. There are people out there who will make the case that he is the GOAT. There is a strong argument to be made that Schatz has raced against stiffer competition. I tend to argue against that, but I'll hear it. I'll listen to it. Regardless, to me, he is hands down one of the greatest sprint car drivers of all time. And the last couple of seasons, we've seen his win totals dwindle. He has not been winning as much as he was, obviously, when he was winning those 10 championships. And he's had a really good season this season. And to come out and win the Knoxville Nationals the way that he did, like I said, had a slow start to the feature, and then to come back and just be picking people off and just look like vintage Donny Schatz out there. It was incredible. So my goat of the week goes to the man in the 15 car, Donny Schatz. So yeah, that was an awesome run by
It's a good
him.
one too.
Yeah, it
Th this
was.
this past weekend of racing was just the weekend of the old guys,
It really was, man. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of
and they
fun.
just so happened to both be Tony Stewart's guys.
Exactly, which is awesome. So,
That makes it even better.
it does. All right. Well, to wrap up today's show, we are going to do it with our Ask 3 Wide segment of the show. If you want to email us any questions, ask me and Keith the question. It could be about really anything. It doesn't matter. You can do so at ask3wide@gmail.com. That's ask the number 3 wide at gmail.com. And this week's question is from Kevin. And he says this: Tommy and Keith, after the high limit sprint car series race at Lincoln, how do you think next season's high limit season will go with their 12 races? Thank you. Love the show. So basically, he's just asking us, how do we think that series is going to be next season? What I know of it so far, and I watched that race that they ran at Lincoln. It was an awesome race. I thought Justin Sanders was going to get the win, and then freaking Buddy Kofoid just out of nowhere. That dude, he's another one. When he is on, man. He's so good. But Buddy Kofoid got the win. From my understanding, those races are supposed to pay. There's, I believe, going to be 12 on the schedule next year. This race at Lincoln was kind of like a trial, try it out, type of thing. And there's supposed to be a payout. I believe it's going to be 23,000 and change. It's like 23,200 or something like that to win. And it'll be 1,500. I want to say 1,500 to start for 10 out of the 12 events, and then the other two are supposed to be like 50,000 to win. I have not seen the tracks and the full schedule. From my
They need
understanding,
to go back to Lincoln Park.
yeah, from my understanding, they're supposed to be, playing nice with the Outlaws. It's not supposed to be conflicting and stuff like that. It sounds similar to what the Extreme Outlaws have done with USAC, where it's like, hey, look, we're not trying to step on your toes. We're not trying to conflict with your events and stuff like that. So I don't know what high limit, I don't know what Larson and Sweet have got planned. It doesn't seem like something that they're trying to create to
It
replace the Outlaws. It just seems like in addition to, and
it
I think it's
almost
going to go well.
and I feel the same way. I think it's gonna do really well. And I think it's gonna be a lot like the racing night in America with the late models.
Yes.
Weeknight races. That way everybody can go
Mm-hmm.
and have a shot at winning some big time money. And this is what sprint car racing needs, whether you like it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Sprint car racing as a whole needs races like these, needs these big money races. Because let's
Yes.
face it, they're out there, but they're not as prevalent as they are in the late model world. I mean, look at Jonathan Davenport.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit, the man's made a million or more just this year with wins.
Yep.
And I feel like sprint car racing needs to be at that level too.
Yeah, they do. They
Whether it's
have
wing or
big, yeah.
non-wing.
Yeah, they have big ones. Obviously, we just had the Knoxville Nationals, Kings Royal a few weeks ago. I mean, obviously they've got their crown jewels that are big time money. Gold Cup out here. It's another 50K. Like they've got their big ones. But when you look at the late models and you look at the number
They're
of
everywhere.
100K and up, it's insane. Um,
But
and late model racing, it's far more secluded than sprint cars, right? There's much more sprint car racing spread across the country than there is late model racing. There really is.
well, it's like you could go run up north, run for
Mm-hmm.
20 grand, turn around and drive 100 miles south and go run for 50,000.
Yep,
And I think what Kyle and Brad Sweet's doing is great. It's great for the sport
I do too.
because where else can you go and run during the week and make the money that they're going to pay out? Or it's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing it to put World Racing Group under. I mean, let's
No,
face it,
they're not.
it'll be very hard to do that.
Yeah. And make no mistake, Brad Sweet is able to do what he's doing because of World Racing Group. Like, let's just be honest here. He's not dumb,
Yeah,
right? You're not going to
no.
bite the hand that feeds you. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be something that is in addition to. I think what we're going to see with dirt track racing and kind of racing as a whole. Obviously, you'll have your top stuff like NASCAR and F1, where those guys, that's what they do. But, when you look at sprint cars or late models, that type of thing, I think we're going to start seeing it be like you see when it comes to what we call soccer or European football, where you've got these bigger leagues, but then you've also got these leagues that are off the sides of it, right? Whether they're champions
Yeah.
or CONCACAF, like all these other things. And there's always something going on where you could be playing for multiple teams, right? As a top player, you can play for multiple teams at the same time, right?
Well,
So with racing, you can be running the outlaw schedule and still be running the high limit and the all stars to just for extra money and just because
and,
you love
and
racing.
and you could look at it as okay, the Outlaws is the Cup Series, and these other are the Xfinity, the trucks, the ARCA, yada
Yeah.
yada yada, so on and so forth. I just think after all the shit Kyle Larson's been through,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is his way of helping. This is his way of helping put sprint car racing back on the map where it needs to be.
Yes.
And the race the other night was damn good.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to come back to Putnamville.
Yep.
Outlaws, come to Indiana. I told you, my
Yeah.
state's great.
Yes, it is.
Hot as fuck during the
Yeah.
summer, but you can work through it, I promise.
Yes, it is. It is. So, so yeah, that's what we think there. Oh man, thank you very much for the email. I think it's going to be a success. I think you're going to see, with it only being 12, events, I think you're going to see good car counts when they do it.
Yeah,
It'll be like
100%.
the Extreme Outlaws where you're going to see 40, 50 cars showing up, especially when you're putting out, 23,000 to win and 1,500 just to start. Like that's
The
really important
the
for those
15
types of guys.
the 1,500 to start alone is huge.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Huge.
That's a
Hell, it's
big
only
deal.
1,000 to start with the Outlaws.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So, when you consider the fact that you could actually, right, if you're willing to put in the drive time and the hours, you can make just as much money running a national modified tour in a car that's way less than a sprint car, right? If you're willing to, obviously, you got, like I said, you got to be willing to run the races and drive the miles. But you could legitimately do that because there's just so much more of them. Yes, the money is not as, you're not going to have $175,000 Knoxville Nationals to win event, but the amount of money that's out there, in total is a lot. And when we look at something like we talk about with the late models, right? The Lucas Oil late models, the World of Outlaw late models, like they have 100,000 to win events. It seems like once a month, you know what I mean? Like it's just like
Yeah,
all the time. So
yeah,
I think it's really good what Larson and Sweet are doing.
I
I
agree.
I I think it's awesome, and it's like he said, it's what sprint car racing needs. The World Racing Group did it with the Extreme Outlaws, getting some bigger money events for the midgets and the non-wing sprints, which is exactly what they need. And Larson and Sweet are doing it with the wing sprints. So yeah, I think it's going to go over great.
I think so too. And
Yeah.
that was a really good question. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yes, it was. So, you guys want to email us and ask us a question, you can do so, like I said, at ask3wide@gmail.com. That's all one, no spacing, no nothing like that. But you guys, that is going to do it all for this week's show. You guys, before we go, thank you very much, as always, for joining us. Please keep sharing, liking, all that good stuff that you guys do. If you want to head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. That would also be awesome if you want to do that. So don't forget to check out our YouTube channel as well, the Ask 3 Wide YouTube channel. We'll have a new video going up. By the time you listen to this, there should be a new video up on the channel. With that, I'm trying to get more put up right now. I'm editing all the stuff, editing the clips and getting the stuff up there. It's taking me way longer than I thought it would, just trying to piece all this stuff together. I had a bunch of videos that I was trying to make before I had my camera rolling, where I would, put up pictures or other B-roll film and stuff like that. And finding some of that stuff was just incredibly hard. And then a lot of it was older, and trying to get it to format into the new, it was just a pain. So we got more stuff coming. Anyways, you guys, that's going to do it. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us. Keith, my man, have a good weekend. Hope you get some rest and don't work too hard.
Yeah, fortunately, I got an office job and I sit and watch paint dry.
There you
No,
go.
it'll be fun. And you have a good weekend too.
I
Everybody that
will.
listens, thank you.
Yep. Everybody out there, have a good weekend. Enjoy the racing and try to stay cool. And until next week, as always, take care.